What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Quisha King Show. I am your host, Quisha King, and we will be talking about faith, culture, and politics, all geared towards the next generation. You're going to want to pay attention because I have a very special guest for you today. I will let her introduce herself. Everyone, welcome Miss Kimberly Klacik. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I have wanted to talk to you for a long time. We met in Orlando. It was I forget exactly what the event was for, but nevertheless, we met and I'm so glad that we did. Can you tell everybody just a little bit about yourself? I'm sure everybody already knows the fabulous Kim Klacik, but let them know.
Well, thank you for that. I don't know if I'm fabulous, but yeah, we met at Willie Monahue's event in Orlando.
Yes.
He's running for Congress in the 10th district, so I'm excited. He's with our PAC Red Renaissance. In case people don't know, I did run in Maryland, Congressional District number 7 to be exact, which encompasses a large part of Baltimore City. And so, Baltimore has been under Democrat rule for over 50 years now. I think it's about 54 years. And so one party mob rule was tough on any city, no matter which party it is. In this case, it is the Democrat Party that has had a stronghold there. But I ran hoping to change things. We see a lot of corruption in Baltimore City, unfortunately. We have a lot of federal and state money being funneled into Baltimore, but things never seem to change on the ground. So I wanted to make some changes. And of course, after that, I started my PAC Red Renaissance because I saw within the Republican Party that a lot of the minority candidates weren't getting support from the Republican leadership. So we've got two things going on here. It's like we've got the Democrats that are kind of using us, we're leveraging our urban struggle to get what they want and line their own pockets. And then you have the Republican Party that completely ignores us but doesn't understand why we vote Democrat. So we got a lot going on. It's very complicated, but I'm hoping that we can change some minds moving forward.
Yeah, you are certainly top of the spear when it comes to, making the GOP recognize that you do have to run in these districts that are, quote, unwinnable. And let's talk a little bit about that for a second. So I've seen, on social media, I've seen people say to you, well, why did you even run there? Like, that's not, why would you run? Or, of course, the GOP wasn't going to support you because it's an unwinnable district and, you're just wasting time, you're wasting money. My personal opinion, that is probably one of the dumbest things that I have ever heard. It's like, okay, if we say we want this change and we can see that the change is desperately needed, it's certainly places like Baltimore and other places that look very similar to Baltimore. Why in the world would we not start to penetrate those races? Why would we not start to give the Democrats a challenge? I mean, because how else are you going to change there if you're not even in the race to win? We're not even giving people another option. So tell us more about, just I don't know, just dig a little deeper into what your opening was, about running in these districts that are, quote, unwinnable or shouldn't be ran in.
Yeah, so when I hear that a district's unwinnable from anybody, I think that's a defeatist attitude, right? I'm sure people told Stacey Abrams not to run in Georgia, but I don't think it was her own party. And now look at that, now it's flipping, and so is the state of Texas, and we're seeing some areas in Arizona and also a couple areas in Florida. So we have to understand that the Democrats are going to challenge us, even if we don't challenge them, and that's why we keep losing ground. A lot of times you see a lot of red states turning to purple and then blue, but you don't often see blue states going from purple to red. And that is because we always retreat. We don't put up these fights. And then we see what's going on around the country. I know you're working a lot on this critical race theory and other things that we see in the school systems. People have to understand a lot of this starts in the inner cities, and that's how it then flows out to the suburbs. So if you never tackle the inner cities and everything that's going on there, then what do you think is going to happen to your neighborhood that could be right outside of an inner city? So I think people need to understand it's a tough road. It's going to be quite a fight. But just to give up and say, oh, I'm just going to move, or, let's not support a candidate there, that's just the wrong thing to do. And I do believe that we do have people that are in leadership positions in the Republican Party that are echoing that same message. And honestly, I don't think they should be leaders of the party. I mean, the last thing you want is a leader I mean, imagine going to war with somebody that says, it looks a little tough over there. We're gonna head this way. Don't head that way.
Right.
No
Yeah.
leader would ever say such a thing. So
Right.
hopefully,
We're
again,
gonna
we'll
let these
change it.
people. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
No,
cut
you're
you off.
good. No, that's what I was gonna say. Hopefully, we'll just be able to change it here soon.
Yeah. Yeah. Imagine having going to war and someone saying, they're killing all the innocent children. They are destroying their societies, and we're just going to let them continue to do that. I mean, far be it from us to get involved in their mess, especially when it's directly affecting everybody. This stuff, like you said, it doesn't stay in just one isolated community. It's starts there, but it grows into the rest of the community, and then the society, and then the culture, as we can see. You're talking about critical race theory and just education in general. In Baltimore, I was reading, there was this kid who failed. I'm sure you heard of him. I heard about the story. This child, he failed all but 3 of his 4 classes, and he was still going to graduate. And he would have been graduating in the top half of his class with a 0.013 GPA. All of this money that's spent towards education first of all, we spend a ton of money in education, red states, blue states, all over the place. But the education, the outcomes that we're getting don't seem to be benefiting children. How in the world could this kid keep being passed on from grade to grade when I think Baltimore gets 16,000 per student or something like that?
Yeah.
How are we passing kids who can't read and do math? Why are we passing
Yeah.
them along?
Right. So we have the 3rd highest per pupil spending in the country. It's a little bit over 16,000 annually per pupil. With that kind of money, you could board a student all week, and he can
Hello.
live at school, right? But yeah, the numbers are staggering. I do know about that specific story. Right now in Baltimore City, 41% of our high school students have a 1.0 GPA or lower. 14, I think it comes down to 16% of our 4th graders can read. Remember, you start reading in kindergarten. So only 16% of our 4th graders can actually read. And then 9 out of 10 Black boys cannot read at grade level. And so when you look at all the money being poured into the Baltimore City school system and every school system, like you said, you just wonder, how could this be? But I think people don't realize a lot of the administrative positions get a lot of money. So our school CEO, Sonia Santalis, she gets $375,000 a year. Now, she actually got a raise just 2 years ago when we already saw those numbers. These aren't numbers because of the pandemic. These numbers have been the numbers that we've had for a very long time. And so to give people raises and still see these results, I mean, it really is a travesty.
It is. It's like, this is the only system where you could utterly fail and then be promoted or compensated for failure. This is a disaster. We're supposed to be, America, the innovators, the forward thinkers, the people, the Renaissance people, revolutionaries, when it comes to, what America puts out into the world. And for the last, I don't know, for sure, 40 years, I would say, our education system has just been tanking. It is not anything that we can beat our chest on and be proud of. This is an atrocity. And so the next generation is literally being set up to fail. I have a friend whose son was given 400 participation points in math. Math, Kim. You mean to tell me you're going to pass this kid along who cannot do math and he needs 400 points to pass the class? How do we do this? And then, I don't know how it is in Baltimore, but in Duval County, we have the same issues with the superintendent. Our superintendent makes almost $300,000 a year. The administration, the top is being fed very well. The teachers and the students are the ones that are lacking when it comes to the funding. And then you have them, they want to tout these graduation rates. All I hear when I go to these school board meetings, and they beat their chest about the graduation rates, but when you dig into the data, you see that the kids cannot perform up to standards. It is just, it's insulting, for the teachers unions and all these people to continue to think that they're doing a good job, and then they keep getting compensated for, I don't know, a lack of work. They're not doing what we're sending our kids in there for them to do. And but it's going to take people like you running in these places to change that behavior, because these are policy issues. It starts with a lot of the policy that's being pushed, and then we can go into changing. We'll start to see some of the changes. What do you think about that? Like, do you think it's a policy thing? Is it a culture thing? Is it both and or like what? How do we change this, Kim? You have all the answers.
Yeah, I wish I did. I mean, I think it's kind of twofold, right? I do beat up on the Democrats a lot, but do you remember the Republican policy, No Child Left Behind? That was something that Republicans implemented. It was a big mistake. And I think that's what led to a lot of parents then, opting out and going to charter schools and wanting school choice, which is a great thing to do. Yeah. But that should have been pushed back and reversed a long time ago. And I think with the Democrat policies, they focus on, social issues more than they focus on reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then also in our schools, I don't know how it is there, but a lot of times our teachers spend so much time modifying behavior during class time. So we have a lot of kids that are just acting out, pretty much out of control. And so the teacher's spending half the day just trying to get kids to sit down, calm down, and pay attention. And so for me, on the federal level, this is why I ran for Congress. I felt that I could basically, I guess you could say, starve them out, right? I would stop the federal funding going to the schools until they actually came up with some results, a strategy, some kind of plan to make sure that these kids were going to be educated. Because we have a lot of kids, they graduate, they can't really do much, and then they end up on the streets, and our crime and violence goes through the roof, and then everyone's, scratching their head at City Hall saying, well, why do we have so many violent juveniles? Why do we have so? Because you're not educating them. They don't have a choice at that point. And so we have to get to them before they get to that. But that's what I wanted to do on the federal level, is literally take back some of the federal funding, stall it, or even just suspend it until they actually have a plan on how to educate the children of Baltimore.
I am all for that. I think a large part of even like, the critical race theory programs that are coming into the school. I don't know if you saw recently, but the National Education Association, the one of the teachers unions, they have BLM week for kids.
Oh, I saw that.
Did you see that? I'm like, oh my gosh. One of their first items on there is restorative justice. Do you know about the restorative justice?
I don't know that piece of it, no.
So restorative justice is in probably all high schools across America. And what it is it's probably all in K through 12, but I know for sure it's in high schools. So when a kid does something bad that they probably should be suspended for, or at least sent to the principal's office for, instead of removing the kid from the class so everyone else can continue to learn, the kid gets to stay in the class. The disruptive child gets to stay in the class, and he or she has to make amends with the child that they have grieved or whatever. So there's no real consequences. They don't really get suspended. They don't get, any real discipline, because it's restorative justice. We're trying to just restore them. There's no consequences. And so what ends up happening is they keep doing all of the disruptive behavior because they know that there's no real consequences for them to face. And so, but this is what BLM in school is aiming for, to push for more of that. And to me, it's just a ploy to get kids to be more activists. They're trying to raise up a new level, a new generation of activists for them to continue on their goals. So, and then they have a whole list, though. They have a whole list of things that they want to do. It's insane.
That is crazy. I did not know that. Thank you for explaining it. It kind of sounds like the bail reform that we saw in New York City, right? There was no consequences for going out and doing a violent act or being a criminal, and then they were right back on the streets because they had no more bail. So it sounds like we're raising activists and future criminals at the same time.
Right. It sounds just like summer of 2020, if you ask me.
Yeah.
Yeah, they just want they want millions they want to turn our children into their little minions to do whatever they want with them. Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So I saw that you had saw a need in your community where there were some kids that didn't have school uniforms and no one was doing anything about this. I think who's the guy, the congressman, Kwesi Mfume, who you actually ran against. He totally turned a blind eye to it, but you stepped up and you helped these kids with these uniforms. Tell us about that.
Yeah, no, thanks for even noticing. A lot of people don't notice the good things, right?
Right, of course not.
Yeah, so we helped 64 families in Baltimore City, and it wasn't just me. I really reached out on social media and I said, look, we've got a bunch of kids being sent home for not being in school uniform, which is against school policy, but for some reason, a lot of the principals were doing it. And so got on social media and I asked for people to just send me an email, basically, if they wanted to help. And what I did is I actually took that donor and I connected them with the family. And so that donor was able to then purchase online uniforms, send them directly to that family's home. So it was just
Wow.
those two going direct contact. There was no money exchange. They literally just ordered it online for them and sent it to their
Wow.
house. And some of the donors were so nice. They even sent toys from Amazon. They
Ugh,
sent, I had one lady sending pajamas and all this stuff and
wow.
blankets. And so it really worked out. All the families were really happy about it. But yeah, no one really stepped up in the city. And I just couldn't believe, not even the mayor. I reached out to the mayor. He did respond to my message. He said, oh, which schools are doing it? Because he wanted to make sure those schools were not sending the kids home. But that
Mm,
didn't put any uniforms on their backs, right? Just
right.
doing that. So I
Yeah.
had to say, you know what, let's do something about it. And it worked out, easy process. So thank you to all the donors and supporters that helped those families in Baltimore.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kim. It takes things like that. It certainly makes you feel like there is some hope because you don't hear about stories like that very often. All you hear are the negative stories, and you don't get to see the heart of people much anymore. Especially when you're on Twitter, it can be a vicious place that I am learning. I feel like I'm still new, so I'm still getting broke in there. But thank you for doing stuff something like that, and I think we need to hear more stories like that. I know that there are plenty of stories out there for us to tell, but you're right, we don't. Nobody typically tends to tell the stories that make you feel good instead of like making you want to pull your hair out every day.
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah. So another thing with schools, what is it like? Have you guys seen the loss of learning with COVID? Because I know in Florida we had, which is why Governor DeSantis wanted to get kids back in school so quickly. We were seeing so many kids lose their learning. What they had accomplished, they were regressing in learning. Were you guys seeing that too in Baltimore? I know education is not necessarily your wheelhouse, but have you seen that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, in many parts of Baltimore City, we have broadband issues, and our mayor did just pass something, and he's getting funding through that infrastructure bill to do something about that. But it's a little too late, right? Because during the pandemic and the lockdowns, there were kids that couldn't even log on at all, right? So
Yeah.
they missed about a year of school. The interesting part is, a lot of the parents were asking, okay, so when they go back to school, will they be repeating the grade? Will they get tutoring?
Yeah.
Baltimore City decided to just bump them up to the next grade and not even go back and worry about it. So that's a problem.
Oh my
So I do think we're
God.
going to see in about 10 years or so, or even before that, we'll probably see a lot of kids in high school unable to read, write, or do basic math because there were a lot of kids that should have been reading at this time that did not get any of that instruction.
Oh
And
my
so now
God.
they're pushing them forward and pushing them through. So that's going to be a travesty. But yes, we had kids that even had straight A's. They regressed and now are not doing so well in school because they
Right.
just had a hard time learning online. So yeah,
Yeah.
the fact that they were locking down schools even longer than they should have made absolutely no sense.
Yeah. It's insane. I feel like the more I read and the more that comes out about Fauci and, all of this COVID stuff that a lot of us were thinking and saying, once we kind of, 6 months into the pandemic, we're like, okay, like something is up, like this is ridiculous. And it's unbelievable how our government has failed Americans. It is so how really they have turned against Americans with the restrictions, with the masking, with the mandates and all of these things. And when you think about what it's doing to kids, it is particularly disturbing to me. Another group that is being affected by this are teenage girls. I know you have a daughter. She's not a teenager quite yet, but I do have two teenage daughters, and although they're not in public school anymore, my oldest daughter did reveal to me that, while she was in school and having to do the mask and all those things, she started to feel like she wasn't pretty without a mask. And I've been seeing a lot of parents starting to talk about this because teenage girls are experiencing like a 13 to 15% increase in anxiety and suicide thoughts, and suicide, going to the emergency room because of suicide thoughts. How devastating is this to our girls? What is happening to our country where our daughters are not feeling like, first of all, it's already hard enough to to be a teenage girl. Your body's going through all these different changes. Your face, could be changing. You got pimples, or just the way you look is totally changing. Add on top of that masking, and if you don't, the social pressures of masking. I know your daughter isn't quite there yet, but are you seeing this? Are you hearing about this crisis that's going on with our daughters?
Yeah, my daughter is 5 years old. I mean,
Yeah.
thank goodness we're able to send her to private school, so she doesn't
Hmm.
deal with a whole lot of that at her level, especially in kindergarten. But
Yeah.
I can say from a personal side, I developed alopecia when I was just 15 years old, and that did a
Mm.
lot. Losing your hair at 15, it is tough. And so for me, it was like, I felt very insecure. I was broken for a long time. And what that really does is makes you either really depressed, you can go down a downward spiral. It makes you
Yeah.
really strong, right? There's only two
Right.
ways to go. So I chose to go, as strong as I could. But, it
Yeah.
is affecting a lot of our girls. We just saw, unfortunately, the suicidal death of Miss USA.
Right.
That I was so shocked to read that. Here's a young woman on the up, beautiful, Miss USA, the correspondent for, I believe it was Extra.
Extra. Yeah.
Yeah, getting all these great things, and you just never know. You never know how people
Right.
are feeling inside. And even beyond the schools and what we're doing with the mass, I think social media is a lot to blame as well.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people attacking others, just for doing good things or just for going on about their journey. And a
Right.
lot of times it's women attacking other women. And that part I will never understand. I will never understand that. But I think that takes it to another level, because you've got our girls that are dealing with it maybe at home or at school, and then they're dealing with it on social media as well. Now they're wearing these masks. Now it's
Hmm.
like they don't have this individuality or able to express themselves.
Right.
So yes, this is detrimental, and I think it's something that should be addressed. So thank you for bringing it up, but we definitely need to hear more of this on a national level.
Absolutely. I don't want our girls to be forgotten. I don't want any of our children to be forgotten, but girls in particular, because a lot of them will be mothers one day. A lot of them will be, leaders in their own right one day, and we need them to be mentally healthy. Like you said, you can only go in two directions. You can either take it and it makes you stronger, or sometimes it does make you go down a road of depression. It doesn't have to be a permanent road of depression, but
Right.
if we have, they're in these indoctrination camps, I call them, formerly known as schools, where they're getting all this stuff and it's just being pounded into them every single day, plus on top of whatever you go through just naturally growing up. We could be at a risk, like you were saying, 10 years from now, where not only we see the loss of learning, the regression there, and them not being prepared to, to be able to work and have fulfilling lives, but also the mental health issue that we could be putting on top of them too. So it is just a very it's scary, to think of. It's like you got the mask, and then you got vax, and then you got social anxiety and all of these things, and it's like being piled on to this next generation, and it does make me worry. I really should have ended our segment with your happy ending story of sending the kids all the uniforms, but I think we could still end on a positive note. Can you give us some hope, Kimberly? What are we going to do? How can we? What are we going to do?
Well, I could say, like I said earlier, talking about the PAC Red Renaissance, we have 23 candidates across the country that we're supporting. Many of them are in inner cities, right? And it is going to be quite a challenge. A lot of these candidates know that they might not get it in 22. It might take to 24, right? They're not going to give up. And then we have some candidates that did run back in 2020, and now they've made some inroads. But I think that's a positive, right? We're seeing more minorities step up to the plate in their own communities. Yeah. If you look at what happened in the 60s, you look at the civil rights leaders and just all these leaders that we had in the Black community stepping up. Think about the leadership now, right? We see more activists, like you were saying earlier. We don't really see leaders. And so I would love to see more leaders on Capitol Hill and other places so that our kids can look at that and say, all right, here's the direction that we're going in. Because I don't know about you, but me growing up, I would look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and I'm like, that's the guy I want to be like. That's where I'm going in life. But I don't know exactly what our kids are looking at today. You know, is it Kim Kardashian? I don't know. I'm not saying she's a bad influence. What I'm saying is I do want more for my daughter, right? So hopefully, you know, we're going to get some more leaders out of this. That's the whole point of Red Renaissance, supporting each other. I do hope that we're going to see more from the GOP. As far as supporting some of these candidates in these areas. I mean, we see a lot now, people talking about the crime and violence in some of the suburban areas, and they're like, oh, it came out of the inner cities. Well, guess what? Had we tackled the inner cities, you might not be getting carjacked in suburbia. So these are things that we got to focus on, and I'm glad that we have more people like yourself stepping up. I watch what you do with is it Moms for Liberty and everything that you're doing with critical race theory and pointing it out to people. I know a lot of people are confused. They're like, well, it's just teaching Black history. It's like, no, there's a difference here. And my daughter is biracial. I don't want her learning anything about CRT. I'm not oppressed. Her daddy's not an oppressor. That's not how this is going to go. Okay. So I thank you for the work that you're doing as well. So I think we're on the right track, right? We're on the right track.
I think so. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. You are certainly making inroads and you are making a difference. Don't let any of these people, not that I have to tell Miss Kimberly Klacik to not stop, because I know you're going to keep it pushing anyway. So I don't have to tell you that, but thank you. And just for a little bit of encouragement, don't stop. Don't give up, because we need people like you to keep doing what you're doing and to show the GOP that, this is not, it doesn't have to look this way. You can win, you can run, you should run. And because of their lack of action over the last 50 years, now we do have to do this slow chip away. So thank you again for everything that you're doing. Tell everyone where they can find you on social media.
Sure. On Twitter, it's Kim K Baltimore. Instagram and Facebook, it's Kimberly Klacik. And then you can also go to redrenaissance.com, check out each of the candidates that we're supporting, and you can go to their pages and donate to them directly if you would be so inclined to do that.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. This was a very good conversation that I have been waiting to have. I can't wait to talk to you again sometime.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.